Insights, Episode 2, Command Mode and Quarkus Dev. Hello everyone and welcome to this Episode 2, which is the third one, just like a good programmer would do in some weird languages like Java. Hey, I'm not alone as usual, so Max is still there. For a while, he might actually disappear during the actual podcast, and then Stuart is there to be the actual expert here. Hey, Stuart, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. So it's actually quite late here, so Emmanuel said I could have a beer. So
Yes,
I've got a nice
that's
IPA to drink during the
yes.
podcast.
That's how we feed the Stuart. It's like he's doing all of those super late meeting shifts because he's in Australia, and a lot of us are in Europe, a lot of us are in the US, so it's kind of a big jump between the time slots. For anybody that has done like three regions meetings, you know what I mean. All
Yeah,
right.
and that's all,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I was just saying that this week we trying this more Asia friendly, APAC friendly one, and last week
Yeah,
we did the US friendly. So we'll see who wins and figure out what to do next
exactly.
time.
How many more people do we get, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
please give us feedback on the time slot. Should it be always at the same time, the same day of the week? Should it be always same time, different time of the week? Those kind of things. Give us feedback either wherever the general Quarkus feedback. It could be Zulip, the Quarkus Dev mailing list, or even the comments on the what do you call that, videos after the event. And the other stuff, we wanted to say is that a long time ago we decided, hey, let's make. Oh, let me share my screen on that. So let's make. Our community has been awesome to actually help us make Quarkus 1.0. We started in March opening up the community, and by November we had Quarkus 1.0. So we said, okay, let's celebrate. We had, I think at that time, like almost 150 contributors, and we wanted to thank
Oh,
them, and
200 plus.
200 plus at the time or right now.
There was 200 when I counted, but yeah, but
No, but I mean when Quarkus 1.0 got released. No, we are in
that might be a little low.
1.4,
Sure,
almost 1.5. So of course it's
that's true.
keep getting bigger. So we wanted to send them T-shirts with a custom made, like I made Quarkus 1.0, and then it took a bit longer than expected, like way longer, and then we ended up with COVID-19, which complicated even stuff more. But they are starting to show up, not for everybody on the planet, but I think people in Europe are starting to get them.
I got mine today, so
All
they
right,
made them to
so
Australia.
see if they made it to Australia. I don't know what happened to the rest of the world, but hey, it's just a few of the people here that received them and tweeted them, but there is many more coming. So thanks for your initial contributions, and keep helping Quarkus by talking about it, or do whatever is the you feel it's the right thing, and thank you pretty much.
Thank you.
All right, so today we're going to talk about a very low-level part of Quarkus to some extent, or rather some very foundational subjects, which are related to how Quarkus starts in this dev mode where you get the refresh like instantly, but also something that we added recently, which is called command mode. So I know Max loves its commando analogy, which I didn't know. So tell us about that first, and then we'll move to the actual subject.
I mean, well, I made the blog last week because we had a command mode in Quarkus 1.4, and I came up with a joke that, hey, this is commando, like command mode. So there's a drawing of like a typical commando picture, and I sent to Manuel, say, is this too cheeky? And he was like, what's this? And I was like, how can you not know? But apparently that's not a French thing. You don't know what commando is. So
Exactly.
anyway, now
I was
everyone
too young.
knows.
All right, Stuart, you want to take the con? So,
Sure.
what is command mode? Why? So we didn't have command mode for a long time. So why did people complain? What is it addressing?
Basically, command mode lets you write applications that run a main method and that can also exit. So before we had this, Quarkus applications basically ran like Tomcat or Wildfire and any other sort of server where you start them and then they run until something external stops them. Either you hit Control-C or the pod gets killed, or basically there's some external event kills the server, or there's a system.exit in your code somewhere and everything comes down. But that's not generally recommended. So basically what command mode lets you do is use Quarkus to write things like utilities that just run on the command line if you want to do one-off tasks and do that task and then exit. So command line utilities, batch processing tasks, pretty much whatever you want. Because these are just normal Quarkus programs, so they have full access to the Quarkus ecosystem and all the extensions that Quarkus provides. And the only difference is that they can exit.
Yeah, and that's important. What you just said, which is you can write a CLI like for batch mode or things like that, but you got the whole ecosystem that you already know. So CDI injection and getting access to Hibernate and so on. So when Max showed his demo in somewhere, it was a bit of a haha moment to me. Like I knew conceptually, but then physically seeing that, hey, from my CLI, I could actually run the tests of my also existing app and mix the two universes was very interesting, because you can still have the server running even though you have the CLI mod in, correct?
Yes, so you could actually have a CLI app that still includes the web server and still can serve requests when it's running.
Yeah.
Which may be a bit weird depending on what you're doing. So that's definitely something to be aware of, is that if you include the web server, it will open a socket and run while you're doing your tasks.
Yeah. Just on that subject, actually, we have a blog which I probably post today. I forgot his name now, but he's a contributor that made it, and he shows how to compile for Windows and Mac and Linux. But he actually shows that his app is actually, when it actually starts with browser. So it's actually serving his app as a browser. So you can use this as a cheap way of doing like Electron kind of app with Quarkus. So there's all kind of weird stuff you can do.
Yeah.
Even do Swing or JavaFX, but let's not go there. But yeah.
Okay. What else? Do you want to keep talking, or do we show it how it works, like in practice? Like, how do I use that?
I think let's show some code, and then I'll show command mode, and then maybe we'll talk a bit more about dev mode and how that works and what it has to offer.
Yeah. All right. Let's share your screen. Let's get
working. Well, so I'll get started with a code.quarkus.io download, because that's the easiest way to get started with the Quarkus app. Now, I might include the REST client extension, but other than that, I'll leave it mostly empty.
Okay. Hey, just while you're downloading stuff, so there's a question like, will the server survive the execution of the command? So remember we said, hey, you can have the CLI and the server running. So, after the command has been executed, will it just die, or so what's the story?
You actually have two options there, and I will get to that in a moment. Right. So you can either have the server die immediately, or you can call wait for exit, and then basically it'll run your main task and then wait for an external sort of signal to shut down, just like a normal server. So you can use it that way to sort of run a task on startup and then run a normal server. So here I've got my normal Quarkus application, and it's got Quarkus REST Easy. I'm not going to run a server for this one because I don't think it makes much sense for the purpose of this demo. So I will just change that to Quarkus Arc, which is our dependency injection container. I don't actually need to do that, so I've got the REST client here, but if you had a bare bones project and you just wanted the absolute minimum that you can have, then just including Quarkus Arc will give you dependency injection and give you enough to get started. So now, because I've got rid of my web container, I need to also delete my example REST resource. And I'll also delete the tests because they just fail anyway.
Quick shout out on that. So we're working on improving the initial set of classes that are created when a new project is created. So if you're interested in contributing or giving your feedback, so Andy Damavin is leading that, and so go to Quarkus Dev and have conversations there. We'll get something at some point. We'll get something much better.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with basically a hello world application just to show off the basic application, and it's going to implement Quarkus application. Now I'll implement this run method, and we'll say return. We'll say system.out.root1.
By the way, if you have questions, just put them in the chat, and then I'll display the best one or the ones that are relevant.
So basically, this Quarkus application is a special Quarkus interface that represents a command that's run after Quarkus has started. So what's going to happen is Quarkus is going to start, and then it's going to run this run method. And then as soon as this method returns, the application will shut down. And the return value here will be the exit code if something else hasn't already exited with a different exit code. Now, the way we actually tell Quarkus that this is the application that we want to use is with an annotation, which is at Quarkus main. So that's all we need to create an app that will run and then exit. So then if I do nvn install the package.
So why is there the need for Quarkus main? Like, could it just detect that it's Quarkus application subclass, or do you want to maybe have several in the project or just select one?
You can actually have several of them in the project. So this Quarkus main annotation has a name. So you can actually give each application a name, and then in the configuration you can reference the name that you want to start, and you can actually change. So that's a build time property. So in application.properties, you can put Quarkus.application.name. Can't actually remember the property off the top of my head, but you can actually change which application is run based on that name. So that's why we have this annotation. But it's also possible that you might want to have some kind of hierarchy of different applications. So this just means that it's explicit which one you want to launch. So now if I run that application on just directly, this terminal does not support. And it hasn't worked.
Yeah,
what have I forgotten? What have I forgotten? Yeah. There we go. So now we'll see that my Quarkus application is run. It said hello world, and it's quit. But it's also produced a lot of noise while it's doing that. So we might try and fix that. So the first thing I'm going to do is disable the banner. So that's Quarkus.banner.enabled equals bye bye banner.
We might do a banner podcast to show how you customize the banner, but it's going to be later.
So that should be a bit better. So now we'll install it. And run. And there we go. Hello world. Now, this is fairly simple and not particularly interesting at the moment, but this hello application is actually a CDI bean. So we can actually use all your Quarkus services directly in here. So we can use another like hello world type examples. We might have a greeter service, which I'll make into an application scope bean. Public string greet return .4, and then we can just inject that greeter service directly into our application. and just use it the same way that we would use any bean. And this applies to basically all the services that Quarkus provides. So things like the entity manager or REST clients, as we'll see in a moment, we can just directly inject them into our application and use them as normal. So, and then we'll print line service.greet. Now,
so what I
so
love,
far,
just give me a sec. So what I love in Max's demo was that he had this regular application, and then he created a runner that was exercising either some test or a specific path to the application. So he had essentially a CLI entry to the REST endpoint he was also exploring, which is where the magic of like being able to inject your services is coming in. Like it's literally the same code underneath. You just had a different UI so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. So if you have like Hibernate entities and you want to, say, write some code that manipulates the database and then exits, you can just import our Hibernate extension. You can then use those entities and just use the exact same code for running command line applications.
Yeah.
So now what I'm going to do is, rather than actually packaging it up and running it directly, I'm going to use Quarkus dev mode. So this is
by the way, you can
the
run
same
that,
as dev.
By the way, you can compile that natively and have an actual native executable, right? Or will you show that later? Yeah, perfect.
I will, although it'll cause my computer to heat up. But yeah, I can show how you can compile it down to native as well. So now we're running dev mode, and it's executed our greeter service, and it's exited. And now dev mode just basically waits to see what you want to do. So now I can press enter to have it run again, and it just runs the same thing again. But dev mode will also pick up changes. So I can change my code here and press enter, and the changes are immediately live. Now, I'm going to talk about dev mode in a bit more depth later, but this dev mode for command, like the dev mode version for command mode, just lets you make changes and quickly iterate on them without needing to sort of rerun the application each time.
Yeah. Hey, I got one question, Max. Is there any limitation to integrate presentation technologies like Swing or JavaFX? So as far as the CLI, the core of the CLI, no, there is no limitation, except Swing or JavaFX might or might not compile natively. We don't actually have done explicit work in that area and write extensions or whatever. So your mileage may vary, but if you are fine with the running in Java, then no problem. Though I was wondering about dev mods. So what would be the impact on, say a Swing app? I guess it would stop and restart, and you would re-land on the home screen or something like that. Correct?
Yeah, it would definitely stop it and restart it, and you'd be back to the beginning. Unless you actually wrote a specific Swing extension that could somehow maintain state, then yeah, it would just be the application just restarts each time.
Yeah.
Just because I actually looked into this, so there are two things. So
you're a bit low, Max. Can you pump up your volume?
Right. There we go. Is that better? Hopefully. Maybe.
Yeah,
no?
It's better. It's better.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So it should just run in VM mode, but what we haven't done yet is that the way Swing and JavaX works, they have their own event queue, and that means any objects that get created there doesn't have like arc CDI beans injected. But I hope now we have command mode, we can also add an extension for JavaFX and Swing that hooks into that. So when you create frames and visualize these visual components and models, that they actually have injection enabled. And then all the stuff that Stuart has shown for CLIs can work for the UIs too.
Have you opened a GitHub issue for that?
No, I don't, but I'll look into it. And around native, just notice that the Gluon guys who was doing JavaFX, they actually work very closely with the GraalVM guys or the team. So we know JavaFX can work on native. Okay. But it's still not transparent. Like you need to do some work. But do that in the extension going forward.
So if you're interested in that area and have a little bit of time to contribute, then there are definitely areas. We know somehow where we want to go in that area. So, with your help, we could accelerate that quite a lot. So, hey, another question. Can we execute the run method via MVN command? So apparently,
Yes.
So you mean like from the IDE or from Maven?
No, he wants to do Maven, but this is Maven exec, and but I'm not saying yes, you can.
Ah,
You just
yeah.
have to
Yes.
set it up.
oh, so it's just a Maven, a POM configuration thing, or it's different?
I think so. That's what he refers to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can also launch this directly from the IDE. So if we create a new main method and add just a normal Java main, public static void main.
It's funny, our brain is wired. It's like, oh, indentation error, indentation error.
We can call Quarkus in our main, we can call Quarkus.run. And we've got two options here. Either we can just call run with no arguments. And this will basically launch like a normal Quarkus server app, like a non-command mode app. So if you call this, your app will just run until it stops, until like you press Control C or the pod dies or whatever. Or we can pass in a Quarkus application class, so our hello application, and then the args. And then we've got a main method that we can run from the IDE, directly from the IDE. So if I go debug here, it will, when I do
Okay, so
IntelliJ build it.
the zero arg one would be the normal. I'm starting my REST server, but for some reason I wanted to create a main class and an entry point. But this one is equivalent. The one with the argument is equivalent to calling the CLI, like the specific hello application CLI class, and then running the args.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see that as I run that and just hit debug mode, it's called my service and printed out Bonjour Max. But you can also just debug it directly from the IDE. So if I set a breakpoint, that will just work as normal. And you can basically just run the app, like debug the app normally from the IDE. Unfortunately, at the moment in 1.4, there's no automatic dev mode support. So you need to keep hitting reload each time. It won't just stay open and press enter. But there should be some progress on that area shortly.
And one thing that's just to remind people, so you could have started Quarkus Dev and then attached your debugger to the application, but for some reason people are a bit unfamiliar with attaching a remote debugger from their IDE, or they feel it's scary. It's not. You just maybe you can show it, Stuart. But otherwise, if you really prefer just to run from the IDE without having to start the app on the side, that's what it's for. You literally have the main and you can run it and you'll be automatically in debug mode.
Yeah, so if you just want to use Quarkus Dev, you can still debug it. And you've kind of got two options. If you just run Quarkus Dev normally, you will see here that one of the things that prints out here is listening for transport at address 5005. So to attach your IDE, I'm using IntelliJ. I go up here and I go edit configurations. And then I add a new remote configuration. And by default, IntelliJ uses port 5005, so you don't need to change that. You just give it a name. I just use the port number as a name, because I generally have a few of these. And then if I run this, my debugger attaches to the process. So now if I set a breakpoint in the process, go back to my terminal, hit enter to reload it, we've stopped at the breakpoint. So it's really quite simple to attach a debugger to a running Quarkus Dev process. Another option is if you want to debug something that's happening at startup, is that when you run Quarkus Dev, you can run with -d suspend equals true. And then it will still open this socket, but it won't actually start up until something connects to it. So then when I hit my debug again, I hadn't actually killed that last one, so it didn't work because it just reattached to the last one. So now, when I hit, if I run it with suspend, when I hit debug, my app will start up, but not until I've actually attached. So that's really all there is to attaching with a remote debugger. Obviously, the setup's a bit different depending on your IDE, but they're all quite similar. And yeah, it is like an extra step though.
Just Max was replying to the Spring Boot Maven comment run question from Chandar. So Max, I don't know if you're here or left again. Right. So the answer is we don't have a Spring Boot. Well, we don't have a Quarkus run equivalent. You can just do mvn exec, which would do the same. But please open an issue, and if you feel that's an important one, then we can definitely add it. That's trivial to add.
Is there run a dev mode type thing, or is it running a production app? Because Quarkus Dev does run the app, but it's just for development
I think that's
mode.
A production one. So yes, Quarkus Dev would run in dev mode, and Quarkus Run would probably be just starting the jar. I mean, the normal application.
So what I might show now is just how you can actually use this to connect to an external service. And I'll just do that really quickly using the REST client. So now let's have a look at what our external service is going to be. And I'm just going to use the getting started quick start just to make it very simple. Now, this basically just has an endpoint that will say hello. So we'll just try and connect to that. So what I'll do is I will run this endpoint here. I'll just run it in Quarkus Dev mode. And now it's up and running. And now I'll create a REST endpoint in
Stuart, sorry.
Yes.
While it's just before you show that, so there was two questions actually. So could you start the app running in cluster? That would be needed. So I suppose it's start the app and then attach to the debugger. I think that would be that was the question from Brett. And I think the answer is yes, except when it's a cluster, you will have to choose one of the node to attach to. So I guess that's the caveat, if I understood the question. And the other question is there any chance to run Java JAX-RS, so REST-easy based application from IDEA with the main class and a hot reload capability? So I guess what you said is not in 1.4, but it's coming, Stuart, or?
What was that? Sorry, I missed that.
So the question is there a chance to run the JAX-RS based app from IDEA, from the the IDE, but with a main class and with hot reload capability? So you said it's not there in 1.4.
It works on my computer because I wrote it today. Okay. So
we'll show it if you got time.
I'm going to show this a little bit later. So what I've got here is what I'm going to show here is just a simple REST client. And basically, this looks exactly the same as the class that I copied it from, because in Quarkus, our REST client uses the same JAX-RS annotations as the endpoint. So if you want to really quickly make up a REST client, you can just basically copy the server-side part of it and add this REST client annotation, which I think I've got the right one. Yeah, and then inject it directly. And and there's our REST client, and then we can just inject this into our Hello application. And we need to use we need to actually give the, I've used the wrong annotation here. It's meant to be register REST client. And I'll pass in the base URI, which is HTTP localhost 80. So now that's all we need for our REST client. And then in the application, I can just say inject REST client. And now, hopefully, this is all we need to make a REST invocation from the command line. So go service.greeting, create max, and run the app and see what happens.
So Andy, you will be next at some point. So thank you, but then you actually will have to do the work too.
I've got a response code for full. What have I done? Oh, I lost my path annotation, which is /hello. So that's why it was a 404. So now if I just hit enter, something's happened there. I think there must be a bug. I've run into a bug there where if it fails on startup, it doesn't restart. So I might need to look into that. But there you can see that I'm saying hello Max and doing an invocation with my REST client that I just inject directly into my Quarkus application. So you can basically use any of the services in the Quarkus universe and just use them directly from the command line, directly from your application. So something else that's interesting here that we had a question about was, what if you wanted to keep this application alive? So if you wanted to just run some stuff and then basically run some stuff in the main, but then stick around because you're running a web server or some other long-running service. And the answer to that is you use something called Quarkus.waitForExit. And basically, if you call that, then this thread will just pause and wait either for a signal to exit the application, like someone hits Control-C, or for another thread to call Quarkus.exit. So there's also other methods here called Quarkus.async-exit, including the ability to pass an exit code, or blocking exit if you want to really wait and make sure that Quarkus is exited. So basically, that's how you can have a command mode application that is also persistent. So if we have a look at this now I don't get that press enter to restart because my app's still running, and it's basically just going to hang around doing nothing for pretty much forever until I kill it because it's not doing anything else interesting.
Cool.
And I think that's pretty much it for command mode. I don't think there's anything that I've missed.
Yeah, I think we've shown everything. There was a question about, so if you have questions about command mode and you want to know more, let us know in the chat. In the meantime, somebody asked questions around metrics, like can I add metrics to my app? Do I need to add a metrics endpoint? Actually, you don't. You just need to, actually, let me go to, let me share that. You don't, you just need to go to quarkus.io/guides, and here search metrics, and there is collecting metrics, and we integrate with microprofile metrics, which lets you expose metrics endpoints, but also a lot of extensions that actually do expose metrics themselves that you can decide to display or not display. So you got the choice. It's very nice. You define, a method which is timed, and then you got the metrics being pushed out. So, what you would expect from a cloud native application. All right.
Yes. So because this Hello application is a CDI bean, you could actually add metrics to this class itself. Yes. But obviously, it's probably only going to get run once, so it's not going to be very interesting. But just thought I'd point out that this is a full-featured CDI bean. So you could say do at transactional and have the main method run in a transaction. And all that will just work as you expect.
Okay. What about, so here you just accept the args and then you go and do that manually. Is there higher level things coming up?
So with the args, these are just, if you just run it using Java, like running a production application, these are just passed through directly from the command line. But we are actually working on some extensions to make processing them easier. So Pico CLI there's an extension for that's in the works at the moment, and that will allow an annotation-based approach to processing these arguments and basically make it easier to write command line applications. So yeah, that's not in Quarkus yet. There's a pull request that is just being worked on at the moment, but once it's in, it will let you use annotations to sort of say what your arguments are that your application accepts, and to define subcommands, so much like how Git has different subcommands based on what you're doing. And it just makes it very easy to write CLI applications.
Yeah. I'll just add in that you can actually today you can just use Pico CLI or Apache Common CLI or those things, because as you can see, it's just you get the main method. You can do what you want. It's just with the extension we're gonna make it a bit nicer, so there's less scaffolding around it.
Yes, and the main person behind PicoCli is actually, well, we don't know how to pronounce this stuff, by the way, so Pico CLI, PicoCli, whatever. But he's the one contributing the extension. He was really waiting for command mod to then build PicoCli integration on top of it for a Quarkus app. So
I'll just have to correct you. It's actually it's a different guy.
Sorry. So someone beat him to it. He was about to start it, and then someone else contributed one. So he's reviewing it and working through it, but he didn't actually do the work.
Excellent.
So something else.
Get things. Yeah.
I'll just point out is that with command mode, you can actually pass in these args using -d quarkus.args. So I've used quarkus.args equals Jim, and then we get the output hello Jim. So you can even pass in these arguments with command mode. And
so if you were to run a Java app, so that's in dev mode, but how would you do it in a normal Java app? Do I need also the command argument there, or?
If you want to pass in arguments, yeah. Wait. No, normal Java. You mean a production app?
Yeah.
So once I've got it installed, we just pass as normal.
And assuming you want to run, assuming you do the native image compilation, then it would just be my app space test, and then it would just work. So we might lose Stuart for a while while it compiles, just so you know. Don't be too scared. Quarkus package type? Is it a new thing?
Kind of. It's been around since 1.2. So we've got basically we still have the native image mojo where you can run with the native profile and build it that way. Mm-hmm. But under the covers, all that does is set the package type, which is a property. So at the moment, we've got 3 package types. We've got native, uberjar, and our default jar package. I'm actually working on the 4th one, which is temporarily being called fastjar, which is a different layout that has a much faster fast loader and should give a nice boost to startup speed. But it's also extensible, so extensions can add additional formats. So like the Lambda extension can extend the types of packages that are needed for running on AWS Lambda, for instance. And what has happened there? I have used a Java 11 to compile it and a Java 8 Graal. I'll just fix that.
By the way, that's a good segue to say we support GraalVM 19.3 and 20, and for both of those, the Java 8 and Java 11 is there. We highly recommend you move to Java 11. It does consume more memory, though the GraalVM team is aware of it, but that's the way of the future. So that's why the default Maven Quarkus application will actually compile with Java 11.
Oops. Should have changed the Graal version and not the Java version.
Graal question, Emmanuel.
Yeah. I don't know, but maybe you know. So Max is so GraalVM has an advisory board. Red Hat has been pushing to open up, and other companies have been pushing Oracle Labs to open up the GraalVM project, and they've been responsive to that. So there is an advisory board to help accelerate that cause, and they keep opening up the project. So that's good. And Max is actually our rep in that advisory board, so he knows a bit more on the GraalVM side of things.
Yeah. Well, so this specific one, GraalVM support Java 13.14. So I actually don't know if they have a build one, but I know they are tracking the very latest version of OpenJDK in their latest development. So I think there's experimental support for it.
Okay.
That's my.
My build is getting there. I don't have the fastest laptop in the world, so but it shouldn't be too much longer.
So that's how we do performance tests. We give an app that is slow to Stuart, and it's massively slower on his laptop, and then solutions pops out.
Well, it doesn't help. He's running Skype and etc. So
yeah, definitely. Did you have specific other questions, Max, you wanted to address before we go in the dev mod?
Well, the one thing I had is how to handle as a user. Do you have all your command line apps and your main app in the same module? So maybe you want to touch on that about different modules or profiles or that kind of thing.
Yeah, hold on. So let's show the native image. So native image has finished in 1 minute and 40 seconds. And then just do test or whatever.
I forgot to give it a parameter.
That's the bug, Stuart.
There's a bug.
This bug was found last week. If you compile to native and you throw an exception, then it doesn't exit. So that's
it would have been nice if you told me about that before I did the live.
I did. It's open.
Anyway,
there we go. It's
So that's how shamey. It's like, hey, see, I told you about this bug. That is funny. All right, so Max's question around profiles.
Yeah, so Stuart is just I'll say, so what I've demoed so far and in the blogs that has been running that main app and a CLI in the same project, which is nice for simplicity. But if you want to do more things in different configurations, it's recommended you move it out to a separate project. You can still do hard reload and all that kind of stuff, but you need a little bit more scaffolding of creating the have a POM file, etc.
It needs to be a multi. It's not really a separate project; it's multiple different modules of the same main project.
Yeah.
So that we can have CLI modules that don't depend on the web server or other things they don't need. Just because it's a bit weird to open the web server port if you're not really using it.
Yeah, one of the things I've been asked for is if this works, because that means you have to duplicate your properties, right?
The application.properties? Yeah. You can. There is a way you can share the config if you put it in a micro profile config.properties, but application.properties is only really read from the current application.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Should we discuss Quarkus Dev then? So what is Quarkus Dev?
Definitely.
Hey, do you remember when you got the idea? I think you were the one that had the idea. So we had Quarkus that was starting fast. Well, no, we had Quarkus and we wanted to do native image compilation. We knew we wanted to do a lot of build time stuff that therefore consume less memory. We did realize that it was starting fast, and then, ta-da, essentially, right?
Yeah, I actually had this idea a fair while ago, and I sort of tried to make it work for Wildfire, and Wildfire was just too big, it never really worked. But I actually had this instant compile reload working in a prototype for Wildfire, but it was just sort of too hard to set up, and there was too many roadblocks in the way. So when we started Quarkus, I was like, yeah, I think I can make this work this time. And originally I was looking at agent-based reload with a Java agent using a project called Fake Replace. But it just turned out that it was just simpler and safer and to just do it using a class loader-based refresh. So when hot reload actually happens, what happens behind the scenes is that when a web request comes in, we check all your source files to see and configuration files to see if anything's changed. Mm-hmm. If it has, we basically put that web request on hold so that we just stop responding to it and then we go off and do some other work. That other work we do is we recompile your application in the background, then we undeploy the current application and redeploy the new one that we've just compiled. But we only redeploy your application itself. We don't reload libraries. We don't really reload all the supporting stuff of the app. It's just a bit that is actually being hot reloaded. So that makes it much faster than, say, something like Wildfly, where you have to reload all the libraries in the application as well. And we've also just kind of optimized for this in our build process. So the build process is hot reload aware and can potentially not do as much work if it's running the second time, because it can cache things and just generally optimize for a reload.
Yeah. The other aspect is then extensions can say, hey, please listen to that resource file for me. So when there is a change, please reload the app. So for example, Hibernate has imported SQL file, persistence.xml. So those we would restart the app when we see a change. And the Hibernate extensions just say, hey, listen to this file and just do your magic when you see them changed.
Yeah, and actually, just a funny story. It was last week, Stuart. You found Liquibase, the data migration tool, was actually taking a long time starting up, and a long time for you was like 300 milliseconds or something. I can't remember. It's not that much, and that was actually you managed to tweak that. So instead of it generating like 6 or 7 different database variations, you made it doing just one. And it's the great thing about the hot dev that the extensions not only can register, hey, follow these things, but we can optimize based on the specific framework's needs.
Yes. So it keeps us honest on the. So our main goal was really the memory reduction, but it turns out that memory and startup time are quite correlated, initial memory usage. So it really keeps us honest. When we see an app that takes too long to start, then we know we can look at the extensions. It's usually an extension not optimizing properly or some stuff that happens inside the core that where we slipped a bit. So we always re-optimize regularly to stay within a usable, startup time. Well, it depends on your laptop, of course, but I like that the fact that this feature actually keeps us honest as far as the startup time.
Yeah, like the performance work is definitely ongoing. Like I've done quite a bit over the last few weeks, just trying to get it even faster. Because if you just kind of rest on your laurels, gradually you just get fatter and fatter. So you've got to, it's like doing exercise. You really got to do it all the time. Otherwise, you just get fat.
Yeah. So here's the trick. You said, hey, we don't restart the libraries. It's just the app that we reload. But then Juan didn't get, fooled by that. And it says, okay, so the hot dev stuff, it reloads the app when you also change the POM file. So what happens in this case?
Then we just kill the process and reload it, recreate it.
Yes.
So normally with hot development, it waits until a request comes in and then checks in the background and reloads. With the POM file, as soon as you change it, we have a watcher on that POM, and it goes, oh, they've changed it, rebuilds the application and relaunches the process in the background. That's a bit slower, but because it's sort of done eagerly, most people don't really notice it. So it's a bit of a trick, but the end result is the same.
But it's okay because you don't change the POM that often, so it's it's a bit slower like this one time, so it's unacceptable.
And
is to reconnect your debugger.
Yeah, that is the downside, is that if you were debugging, you'll lose your debugger connection, so you need to reconnect. But in theory, now I could do it without losing the debugger connection, but I just don't know if it's really worth the effort because it is relatively technical and it's just something that I don't think happens that often. So I don't know if I want the extra complexity just to solve that little problem.
So one question from Nando: how does it feel when you show it to JavaScript developers? So the startup time and hot reload and say it's Java. So that's a fair question. I'm not sure we want to answer that question, but it definitely has opened the mind of a bunch of people, even outside Java, to say, oh, hold on, you actually are addressing the sort of code workflow that I usually have with my other platforms. So this has always been good. It doesn't mean necessarily that the person will jump on Java and give up on JavaScript. One thing we've been exploring and we probably need to keep working on is how do I do my JavaScript frontend and Quarkus backend and have them work hand in hand. So I know, Stuart, you've done some work on that, and there is a few blogs that are out there, or at least one that I can remember. So maybe you can chat a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think the simplest way is you just use Webpack or whatever as the front end doing the serving. And you serve the Quarkus app on a specific path like /API, and then you set up a proxy within the JavaScript server that just delegates the API requests to Java. And that way you get hot reload from the JavaScript Webpack server for all your web assets. And you get hot reload on the Quarkus side because it's a normal Quarkus app. Yeah. I don't know if there's much more that we can do there. Like something I've kind of suggested is maybe the idea of having the ability to launch the Webpack server whenever you launch Quarkus Dev, which would be very simple to do. But I don't know if there's any real demand for that or not.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of useful integration we could do, but it's what has stopped us is like, what is the right code workflow and does it make sense, right? So right now we have those ideas and we haven't executed on it. So if you have feedback, if you're a front end, if you're a full stack developer and have different style of Quarkus plus this front end, then that's good feedback. Please come to Quarkus Dev or Zulip and have conversation with us to refine where we want to go.
And there's one actually. There's someone who made a blog about. He does the setup where he just uses Docker Compose to run Quarkus in dev mode and Node in dev mode, and then it all kind of just works.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One unrelated question is there an intention to allow includes in the configuration file so that it can be layered logically? So we discussed it, and so far the majority decided to keep this application.properties as this one file and have all of the profiles inside it. So the way you do it, and maybe Stuart, you can show a configuration file with
profiles.
Yeah. So the way you would logically split it is still in the same file, but you would logically add, add a profile prefix with the percentage one. And here, if you're in the dev profile, which is the one used in Quarkus Dev, or you can have your own profile, for example, staging, which would have different setup, database configuration setup or things like that. So you can actually change things in that area. That's still in one file, and there is this question of doing a bit like what Spring Boot is doing, which is essentially allowing includes. That's an open question. We need more feedback on that because it had some complexity into how you describe things. So the added value of the feature needs to outweigh the extra complexity. So we're open to that. Please, come on Quarkus Dev and have a conversation, Kenneth. That'd be good. I wanted to say something else. Oh yes, I've got a.
So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go do the show.
I just want to show something quickly that is coming in the next version of Quarkus 1.5 that I literally just finished today. Well, literally just got started today. So I'll kill that other web server. And now in my project, I've upgraded to 999 snapshot and added back REST easy. So now I should be able to just debug this from a main method, hopefully, if it works. So, oops, we still got, and now because my REST client call has failed because I shut down that web server, so we'll just get rid of that.
Yeah, basically what you're showing now is command mode with dev mode built in.
Yeah, so now I'm showing dev mode, but running it from a main app. So here I've got a basic web server, but I don't have any REST resources. But previously when I showed this off, you couldn't actually do hot reloads when you just launch from the IDE. So when you right click on this main and go run, that was it, you were stuck with it. But with my new with my changes from today, Now I should be able to create a resource. Path hello. Get public string. Oops. And now, if I refresh, my changes are live. So basically, all you need to do to debug the Quarkus app now, once this goes in, is just right-click on a main, hit debug, and you've got an app running in the debugger with full hot reload support enabled.
Awesome.
Very nice.
I wanted, since we discussed the notion of profile, I wanted to show something. So first of all, Quarkus IO, there is a lot of resources. So let me go and show. If you go to, where is it? Community, I suppose. Then you should be able to see, where is your list of publications, right? Publication. Yeah, go to publications, and then there's like a gazillions of articles and blogs, not from us, not from the, let me make it bigger. So articles and blogs, you got videos down the line somewhere. We probably need a TOC at some point. Books, podcasts, stuff like that. So if you're interested in more, then you're probably more than you can read. But what I wanted to show you is the blog also has a lot of content. So about the announcement, of course. Oh, well, there's a typo here to be fixed. And we just added the tags here. Yeah, I know, about time. But what's interesting is development tips. And I wanted to show you this one, which is a tip for using Hibernate ORM and profile and live coding. So Hibernate, you add an entity, it generates the schema. So by default, the way I like to do it is to set Quarkus Hibernate ORM database generation to drop and create, so that every time I do a change and it restart the application, I got a fresh start, and then I can play with it. And I usually had a small imported SQL file with the content that I want available, and it's just working and it's great. And it's always starting from like a base level of data in the database. So that's awesome. But sometimes you have a fairly complex data set in your database and you just want to update only a specific new entity that has been added, or adding a property name or something like that. So here you can use the update options with the risk that... no, hold on. Yeah, the risk is that if we have to do the update on the table that you were having data, then we might have to delete it. So it's, don't use that in production for sure. But that's an interesting second style development where you keep the data alive, and then you do your updates and you see the application with the full data load, which is an interesting aspect. And the third option is to just say, don't do database generation and manually trigger the database generation, and maybe use Flyway as a tool for the migration. And that way you can run on your live data and do your updates, and you're safe as far as erasing your schema or your big data. So and if you use profiles, you can actually mix those. So you could have a dev mode, which by default do the drop and create and import with a special import-dev file if I want to. If you have a dev with data, so you don't want to lose the data every time you restart. So here you can say updates, and then you point to an empty load script, and it will not override what's in the database. And finally, in production, you don't add a file. So that's the safe part. And then you do mvn compile Quarkus dev with the Quarkus.profile, and then you choose the profile you want to run, and you're good to go.
We got a few questions while you were talking. One said it would be nice if things could be as integrated as they were in Rails. I guess that's
one of the things. Back to the JavaScript plus backend, conversation, I suppose, right?
Yeah. So I guess like one of the inspirations we have is Play, which is inspired for Rails. So it's you kind of.
Yeah. Again, Eduardo, come in Quarkus Dev and expand on that idea, because it's when we come to the details that sometimes we're like, we're not sure it's worth it. So it would be interesting to to get more of your feedback on that. Also, applications have moved a bit away from the Rails, like the whole monolith style, and it's more like microservices with a front end dedicated. So it's a bit less useful than it used to, though I do accept the fact, and I do like the fact that you can still write your monolith in with Quarkus, especially to get started until your monolith becomes way too big. And the last question I'm seeing is it possible to use test container in dev mode to not restart in hot
Hard
reload?
reload. So I don't think we have integration right now, but it's one of those things I thought would be nice. You could actually specify that, hey, don't do it on this restart, but not sure if it's doable.
We could do it with an extension. Like, it's definitely something we could do.
Something we discussed as well is on the Hibernate side. It's to say, yes, don't run the whole database creation and import changes when none of the entity actually have changed. Right. So that's something we have in the back of our mind, but haven't really executed on.
I've got a patch in progress for that will let you see which classes have changed on each reload. Because at the moment you can't see, you've got no idea if an entity's changed or hasn't changed, or basically what's there. So then I think once that's in place, then you can skip the Hibernate generation, the Hibernate validation, if the entities haven't changed.
You can start doing some fun stuff then, because then you could also, on the restart, run the tests that are related to that stuff. So
possibly. That's it's hard to say, this class has changed, so that this test depends on it.
Well, if you have your tests and you keep track of the call graph, then it's fine. Yeah. But anyway,
we've got plenty of ideas. What we like is more people behind the keyboard. So if you're interested, you're more than welcome. There's maybe a one-line question is, so extensions can somewhat control what happens during dev mode, and yes, to some extent, like especially defining the list of resources you want to reload and so on. But otherwise, it's a full restart of the extension's build process and then run process. Correct, Stuart?
Yeah, but it's when the extension gets run the second time, it has access to the live reload context. So it knows that this is like a live restart, and it can cache stuff in there from the first run if it wants sort of.
We do. So where do we use that feature? It's a recent feature.
Not many places at the moment. It's mostly used for sort of fairly technical, low-level stuff. So, in Arc, I added an optimization where it won't regenerate beans for library beans that haven't changed. So if you've got a CDI beans based on like the platform, like the health beans and things like that, they were being regenerated each time, and they don't need to be. So I just optimize that way.
Just a small warning: if you do write some extension, be careful what you do there, because you don't want to leak things. You can easily because you can adjust your stuff, you can also end up messing up things. So just be careful.
Oh yes. For example, if Hibernate was putting the entity instances in there, then because the class loader is removed and restarted, that would be bad. That's what you're saying.
That kind of thing.
Right. All right. We're a bit out of time, a bit overboard. So thank you for attending. Thanks for your thanks. I didn't show most of them, but and thanks for being having more people than we had usually. So we were about 60, a little below 60 for most of the show. So that's kind of great.
That was awesome.
Yes, there you go. Beer time for whoever is allowed to do it. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to youtube.com/QuarkusIO. Talk about this podcast or videocast rather to all of your colleagues and friends, and also you can rewatch that at your own pace and time. It's all on youtube.com/QuarkusIO, and there is a Quarkus Insights playlist. So thank you, everyone, and see you around.
See you.
Right.